Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode. I have guests all the time that seem to surpass one another in a lot of different avenues in their lives, but I've never truly sat down with someone quite like Tu. And I have been, you know, reaching out to people like Tu, and you guys have been asking me to bring Tu on, like I think every other podcast has, because Tu's a badass. But I have Tu Lam with us, guys, and just brief overview, and then I'm going to let him tell the story. But if you don't play Call of Duty, you need to go check his fucking face because you're looking at it right now. And not only that, is this man has served 20 out of 23 years as a special operator, and he has spent the rest of his life in literal harmony teaching and educating through Ronin Tactics. I am so thrilled to have with me Tu Lam. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on. Hi, guys.
You, You're just like the softest. I don't. You're a terrifying man, but I'm telling you right now, you're the softest teddy bear I think I've ever. Like, look at you. Your smile is contagious. I can't help myself.
Thank you.
So, listen, you've been around for a long time in this community, the veteran community, and in it seems like mental health. I really want to start off really where you started when you were young. You went through a lot of things very early on that most children should, number one, never have to experience. But because of the strength and courage of was it your mother who got you
Yeah.
and your brother out? That to me, I want to start in Vietnam. Can you take me there?
Wow. All right. So, I was born in the hospital of Saigon in South Vietnam. During that state of the Vietnam War, American troops left Vietnam and just left a devastating impact on the people of South Vietnam. And I was born on the losing side of war. I was born on the basement floor. My mother shielded my body from incoming artillery fire in the morning of my birth. At 3 months old, I lost my freedoms to the communist regime. The communists, the North Vietnamese army came into the city of Saigon. At that time, they were taking anybody out of political power. It was basically genocide. So basically, they were pulling people out. They were looting through their homes, and if you served alongside the Americans, if you had any uh, position of political power within that government system, you were executed. Um, my grandfather, we lived in a small apartment in Saigon. Um, at 3 months old, the military, the North Vietnamese, kicked open our door. They drug us out in the streets. They separated my uncles from our group. They called out a list and they put them in a group and they gunned them down. My other uncles were imprisoned in what's called re-education camps, and these were torture camps. People died of hard labor, starvation, and we lost some of our uncles during that. We were raised, roughly around 3 years old. We're being oppressed, and my mother's saying that soldiers would often go through homes and loot and basically take out belongings and valuables. The government system started taxing heavy taxes on the working class. People that couldn't afford it were immediately sent to labor camps and eventually faced genocide. At 3 years old, my mother and I and my brother and father, we escaped on a wooden fishing boat, and this is a small motor boat. Maybe fits about 40 people. We had 100 people on that boat, and I want to say this is our family was just one of the hundreds of thousands of refugees leaving at that time. A lot of bandits in the pie tree would come in because they knew fleeing refugees would come in. So the neighboring bandits from Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, they would come in there and they'll stop the refugees by gunpoint. They'll board the ships, uh, kill the men, rape the women, and torture the children. In fact, it was common practice amongst fleeing refugees to carry poison within their belongings, so that they can poison their children, so they can die in peace without being
Oh,
tortured. Somehow we escaped through the pie tree. The the captain of our boat, he was ex military Navy, So he was able to deploy the tactics in order of us to get out of Vietnam. And we made our way into Malaysia, where the Malaysian Coast Guard stopped us at gunpoint. They didn't want any refugees in their hometown and in their country. They were third world country anyway, so they don't want our problems, right? So
Right.
they stopped us at gunpoint. They drug us back out into the South China Sea, shot our motor, cut the lines, and left us there to die. My mother said we drifted for nearly, a month. People dying, starvation. The elders that try to escape, they died first, and their bodies were thrown overboard. We lost food and water, so we were basically dying. And my mother said that she was contemplating on giving us this poison.
Oh,
Um, but she said a miracle transpired that night, and a tropical storm hit us. And it washed us actually further out into the South China Sea. And she said that this saved our lives because that gave us a few more days together for the water. And she said that we drifted and drifted, and at nighttime, there was a spotlight that hit our boat, and it was a Russian supply boat coming out of Vietnam. And what I want to say to you is that the Russian communist ideology is what took me out of my country. That's what we lost our freedoms. But yet these people, um, they took us on board and they took care of us. They basically saved us. And that taught me a hard lesson in humanity. You know, so then we made our way into Indonesia, where they dropped us off on the beach, and basically there's a refugee camp there. What I want to explain is this refugee camp is just it's a patch of land out in the middle of the jungle. You
mm,
have hundreds of thousands of refugees in this area, and people are fighting to survive. So people are often murdered for supplies. Women were drug out in the jungles, raped, killed. Um, we lived there for a year and a half, in this. And I asked my mother why a year and a half, and she said, your grandfather who funded the escape, he said if you were to survive this escape, a slim chance to none that you will survive, but if you were to survive, I need you to promise me that you would try to make it to America. And the reason why is because during the war, my aunt married a American Special Forces Green Beret officer, and while he was fighting the Vietnam War, his camp got overran, and he was stabbed by a bayonet, and they evacuated him out. They thought he was going to die, but he's a Green Beret, right? So
he's a Green
he lived.
Beret.
Right, he lived. And he sponsored our paperwork to get us over to the United States. So after a year and a
Wow.
half, we made our way over to America. Now, this is where I want to talk about this because we're seeing this today. The racism, the hate, the discrimination. Right? We're fighting equality, and I want to put you back in. During the late '70s, early '80s, it was very racist times in America, just because the Vietnam War was an unpopular war.
Right.
Up to then, the Americans, anytime we would fight a war, the armed forces would have their reporters, and they'll censor everything out, right? But the Vietnam War was the first time that the media was allowed to flood in, and just civilian reporters were allowed to capture war, and well, we know war is not pretty, and people died.
Mm.
So unpopular American war. So could you imagine a Vietnamese, right? I'm the face of an unpopular American war, right? So people always ask me, "Hey, Tu, what is your first memories, of life? What is it, man?" I tell you, man, my first memories in life was my mother took me to a grocery store. We
Wow.
were very poor, right? We were very poor at that time. We went in this grocery store. Let me explain to you. I've never seen so much food in my life, like in one area, right? And people are like, so what? But when you starved, when you almost died, that means a lot to you. And I remember looking at my mother, and she was so happy, right? It was, mother and son time that day. And I was so happy that, that my mother was happy, and we were able to get food, and we're not starving anymore. And we loaded our carts, and we pushed our way out to the car. We're loading the car. And this man came up to me, And he looked at me, and he spit on my face. And he
Shut
flicked,
the
yeah, he flicked my mom off, and he said that, go home to your country. And he used the words, like chink and all these
Mhm.
racist names. At that time I didn't understand.
Right.
And my mother, of course, her being the strong-willed person, she actually wanted to fight him there, but she
Yeah.
told she told me to get in the car, and I just didn't understand. And I was starting school at that time, at that age, and we're very poor. We lived with my uncle when we first came in America. He was an officer in the army, right? So he had, had this huge house, and I never seen such beautiful living conditions like that, and I was so happy that we was not starving. And eventually we moved out, and my father and my mother, we lived in a very poor part of town. That's all we could afford. It was a small apartment. The only furniture we had in that apartment was one full-size mattress. One full-size mattress that my whole family slept on. It was my brother, myself, my mom, and my biological father. It was very hard times, and my mother would get donations from other refugees and my aunt, but these were like third hand-me-downs, and
They're
we had
like through the system.
yeah, it's been through the system, and had holes in the shoes and stuff like that. And my mother would stay up late at night to sew the hose and fix the shoes so we can go to school. Let me tell you about this day. I was in third grade, and I would get picked on daily, and I would get picked on daily because I was poor and I looked different. And even the teachers did not approve of the refugees coming into the town. In fact, there was a teacher that openly said that she don't like refugees coming into her hometown, and she was looking at me, So that always triggered the other kids to make fun of me,
Right.
and
It gave him permission without giving
yeah,
him permission.
and she wouldn't stop them, because she didn't like me anyways, because I looked different.
Right.
I was poor. So there was substitute teacher days were like the worst for me because my Vietnamese name is actually pronounced Tu Lam, right?
Great.
Yeah, can you pronounce that? Right?
Cool.
Imagine pronouncing that. So I say Tu Lam because you guys don't butcher my name.
We
But
will every goddamn time too. So just don't try it. Just don't.
so there was this one substitute teacher day, and I want to talk about this day because this actually is through the struggles, right? We find our strength.
Right.
So, this day, I was defeated. I was being picked on. I was a small, frail, malnourished little boy. I was poor. Um, People would always call me names and pick on me. So there was a substitute teacher day, and he came in and he tried to pronounce my name. Obviously, he fucked it all up.
Yeah.
And then
Sorry.
I started all the other kids to pick on me. They threw paper at me and they're making their eyes, and there was this bully. He hated me, right? He hated me. And he hated that I was poor. He reminded me that I was poor every day, right? And
Because you needed a reminder. Very
yeah,
obvious.
right.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know I had holes in my shoes. He had to
Yeah.
remind.
Thanks, bro.
So then he made fun of me, and substitute teacher, had enough, and he said, "You two boys need to go down to the principal's office." I'm like, I didn't even do anything. I'm the victim, right?
Right.
And I didn't even like act back. I wasn't even engaging with them. I was just being picked on, right?
Oh my God.
So I walked down in the principal's office, and the principal said, "You sit over here, and you sit over there, and your parents are going to come pick you up." Well, my mother didn't have a car, so I knew I
Right.
was sitting there for a while. So I was sitting there in the principal's office, and the mother of the bully came in, and she demanded to know what's going on. The principal got up and he looked over at me. He said, "Your son called that boy a chink," and he sat back down and nonchalantly went on his way. The mother went and picked up her son and walked over to me. Obviously, I'm already defeated, so I'm looking at the ground,
Right.
right? And she's standing there, so I see her feet. So it forced me to look up at her, and she said to me something I'll never forget. She said, "You don't belong here, and my son is right, and you do need to go back home to your country."
The fuck she did.
And then She left. You ever cried so hard that you started hyperventilating?
Few
Well, I
times.
started hyperventilating, or I started crying and hyperventilating. The principal said, "Boy, if you're gonna cry like that, you need to get out in the hallway." So I did. I went out in the hallway and I was crying. I was so defeated. My mother never came and picked me up because, she don't have a car. So I caught the bus home and didn't tell my mother. I
Oh,
remember sitting there in my room and I was doing my homework and it's really down. So my mother never said anything. She never asked me what happened. She just came in the room. She sat next to me and she said to me one thing. She said, "Son, there will be the bad days, but what do you learn from
no, too.
it? Right? What do you learn from it?" And nothing else was said. Eventually, my mother and biological father got divorced. It was just hard times. We faced poverty. We starved. I mean, we did go days without eating, as a child. Um, so it was very hard time. So when I was 8 years old, my mother got remarried to American Special Forces Green Beret.
Shocker! That wasn't in your path at all, too.
Yeah. And we moved out. So imagine 8 years old going from, okay, my stepfather, he was a drill sergeant, Green Beret,
Oh
really
god.
disciplined, hard guy. And I was 8, and I went from 0 discipline because my biological father, he wasn't in the military, we didn't
Mhm.
grow up with discipline, so going from 0 discipline to getting up at 4:30 in the morning, making your bed,
Was your
raising the flag,
was
putting
your
your
dad Jocko?
oh my god, he was pretty much,
Oh my
he's just
god.
hard, he's a hard man, but he'll tell you, "I was raised in a different American time than you were." And I raised the flag and I put my hand over my heart, and then afterwards we would go into 45 minutes of physical training, and then we'd go into school, right? So every day was like, and then after school we would do chores, and then we had a family company that we had to work in. So what I'm saying to you is 0 discipline to
Full.
150
Just
full.
couldn't be more.
Right, and I love my stepfather, and he molded me into this disciplined person in life, but man, at 8 years old, it was a hard pill to swallow,
Yeah, he
and
rocked you hard.
I really miss my father, and any child who goes through divorce would tell you that, like, that's a hard time in their life.
Yes. Do
So I
you sorry, not to interrupt too, but did you see your father much after that?
no, I never saw him again.
Oh, fuck's
In
sakes,
fact,
didn't expect that.
yeah,
Oh.
the last thing I heard was when I was fighting a war in Iraq, I called my mom, and she said he died, and I never saw him. But getting back to that day, I was being picked on too, being picked on in
Mhm.
school. We were poor. We were living better now because we were with my stepfather, and he was American Special Forces, but he was enlisted. But we were decent, but we didn't make that much money. We were just a blue
Right.
collar family, right? And we worked our butts off, and went to school. So I was being still picked on in school, and I haven't heard from my father in over a year. It was very difficult. And finally, my mother came in. I was doing my homework one day. My mother came in, and she said, "This is from your father." It was a cardboard box. And I remember looking at the cardboard box, and I picked up the cardboard box and I put it across the room, and I would do my homework, and I would periodically look at that box. I I was so hurt by my father leaving us. I
Yeah.
didn't know what to do. And finally, I built enough courage to open up this box. And inside the box was 4 VHS tapes. You guys don't know what VHS is. It's the OVCRs, right before
I will
the
send
DVD.
you a link to, like, an old school VHS tape, like, record like, player and, like, a rewinder. I will send it out to all the millennials. Don't worry, too, I got you.
So these were dubbed tapes, and they were written in Vietnamese, right? And I didn't know how to read Vietnamese. I was too young to learn how to read. right? Vietnamese. So I picked one tape out, right? Just randomly picked one tape. I threw it in the VCR. It was called The Art of Budo. For the viewers, if you don't know what Budo is the combat art of being a samurai. It's the combative side of being a warrior, and it was tied into spirituality and enlightenment and the way of Confucianism. You know, very Zen based teachings. You know, a path, the way. I'm like, what is that? What is the way? Bushido. What is it? The way of the warrior. What's that mean? You know, you have to understand. I was defeated as a boy. I was malnourished. I was this frail boy. I wanted to be something more in life, but what? You
Do
know,
you too with these and in the eight you were how old were you when you left Vietnam exactly when you got on the boat?
three
Okay, so you were 3 years old. And at that time, did your mother and brother speak English or just Vietnamese? Or was your
enemy.
brother older?
Yes, he was 4 years older than me, and
Okay.
we didn't speak English. We just spoke Vietnamese.
Okay. So at that time you couldn't read it as you got older, but you could understand it when it was spoken. And did your mom speak it when she was in the United States to
Yes.
you and okay, and the boys?
Mm.
How I have a couple questions. I want to break something down here. And so just follow with me, okay? So your mother, number one, I feel like you're cool and all, but I'd rather talk to her. She is a fucking she is a force of nature. And I need to acknowledge that right off the bat. I'm a mother now of a 5-year-old boy. And when I
Like,
hear, yeah, thank you. He's an animal. When I hear you describing and discussing the sheer mental strength of your mother going through what she did and taking you on these ships. I don't take Jack many places by myself because he's a tornado. The idea of fleeing a war and seeing what you saw, and then to, I'm not going to lie, you hit me in a lot of feels here because I didn't expect to see this person in front of me and hear what out of your mouth what she had to do for you and then see the person you are now. So that's why I'm trying to break it down for people because when you come to the United States and you are experiencing racism on the level that you are and to the point that you are, you I'm trying to get people to understand that the culture that you come from is a much help me here too. It's a much, I want to say harder culture. It's a much emotions are not like they are in the United States.
uh,
It is a very different thing. I have some factories in China and they straight out call me fat when I look fat. Like there's a different way. I'm not kidding. After I was pregnant, they're like, "You're still fat." I was like, "Fuck you." So they have a you guys the Asian culture has this beautiful way of life, but they also have this side that is very hard to understand. And I can only imagine when that happened to you in the parking lot and your mother's response, my feeling, it hit me like it happened. It's like you were a child. I watched you go through that and I watched you emotionally go back. And it was obvious to me. And that was very intense. And knowing how young you were and not understanding, and another person thinking it was acceptable to call you that blows my mind when you rock into your 8 years old age and you end up getting some incredible opportunity to have your mom be happy for once, right? And be somewhat free of a system and somewhat fed and somewhat looked after. The fact that you had to take that on the chin the way you did, and then you never really discuss it the first day that you were bullied. How did you, at 8 years old, have more wherewithal and mental strength than most grown ass adults that I know? You have to, there has to be more to this too. You can't be 8 years old, go through what you did, and still be able to hold on to that the way you are and power through. What did do you remember what you told yourself? Do you ever have any self-talk? Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah, you know, the only thing was I was really defeated, and you know, people always say, "How did you get over racism?" I didn't. You don't get over hate. You don't get over
Right.
somebody spitting in your face and flicking you off from every angle, from a teacher to your coach allowing you to get beat up by other students and turning his eye. I mean, we were really isolated and I felt alone. And the thing was there was not a lot of refugees in my hometown because, America was a hard country to get into as a
Right.
refugee. There was a lot of demands. And I ended up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is like the home of special forces, like special ops. These
Right.
are all like majority of spec ops guys were walking around this town straight out of the Vietnam War.
Right.
Like that was the era I was in. I was raised in that community. My stepfather, my uncle was special operations.
Did
I just didn't know like what position I was in at that time.
right.
I was defeated, you
Yeah, you were
know,
that bad down.
I was defeated. And the only thing that held me on was that VHS tape.
When you found that, what did your mother say? Did she know what they were? Did she have an idea of obviously the culture that is built and baked into the culture? So, did you discuss it with her? Did you bring it up? Like, I have so many questions around this because I know this was the start for you of really becoming who you are now and that peace that you bring in to everything. So, what did your stepfather think of this and your mother when did you tell her this?
No, no,
What
I never spoke to her
all
about
of this?
my struggles, and just because she gave up so much for me. So I held on a lot of struggles. I figured it out by myself, you know, because she had enough problems of her own, you
Right.
know, and going through divorce and she was going to college. Gosh, man, she was so bad. So she came here, hardly spoke English, and went to college and got an education, and told me this. She said to me this. She said, "Son, no matter what, if you have an education, you can never be oppressed."
You're damn right.
Right.
It's such a special thing to hear you say that because I think people, especially nowadays, and I'm sure you see it, um, education is flicked off like it's not a privilege. It's not an opportunity for growth. It's this, I'm just going to go to college and my parents are going to pay for it. And in blah, 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 blah. It's not worth what it used to be worth. There isn't this way that we are teaching our children the respect of education and how it can not only move you from being oppressed, but it can move you up in the world to make positive change. And your mom seemed to know that early on. Did she so how did that work when she went from Vietnam? Did she have some schooling there and then come over here? And
Yeah.
then she was able to roll in?
Yeah, she had
Wow.
some schooling there, but she was so young when she left. She was 24. 24 years old, she boarded a boat with two kids, her husband, knowing that 99% chance that we may not make this.
When you say I wanna ask, and this may be prying a bit. When you say that parents often brought poison for the children on the boats, what are we looking at here? What type of poison?
I don't know. I don't know what they had. I know that she spoke of a poison that makes us go to sleep, right? So we won't feel the pain because kids were being tortured by these bandits, mutilated, tortured,
Like,
enslaved.
yeah, this is
So
like it's like child soldiers, like when they get taken, it's
yeah,
over. Yeah,
pretty much.
yeah.
So I was this defeated 8-year-old child raised with a hard military discipline. So I'll bring you to this day. Fast forward to 11 years old, right?
Okay.
So 11 years old, I'm riding in my uncle's little dune buggy because he fixes Volkswagen dune buggies for hobbies. And my uncle is American Special Forces Green Beret, right? And he's a hard guy, and he's the one who sponsors us to get over the States. And, he said something to me. He was driving me to Dairy Queen. He goes to, just out of blue, right? I was sitting in the passenger seat, 11 years old. Too, there'll be days that that you don't want to do anything, that you're going to feel sorry for yourself, and you're going to ask yourself, do you want to be a fucking commando today? When your bones ache and it shatters and it feels like it's about to break because of the heavy loads you're carrying, you need to ask yourself, do you want to be a fucking commando? When everybody doubts you, make fun of you, and you fail over and over again, you need to ask yourself, do you want to be a fucking commando?
You're 11.
I was 11 years old. Could you imagine the
No, I
impact?
can't. No, I can't. That's why my brain is you're watching it slightly explode in front of your face because I can't wrap my brain around that talking to an 11-year-old saying, "It's going to be tough. It's going to be difficult, but here are your options." I can't imagine one of them being, "I'm going to break you down to the point where you're going to become one of the most feared men in all of the world." 11.
I sat there, I looked at my uncle, and I knew what a commando was. I was raised in that community.
Right.
The discipline, the drive, the physical fitness, the training, the mindset to be this almost superhuman being, you know, commando. Hmm. So later on that year, I was 11, and then my mother took me to a refugee area, right, where these refugees were in. They're barely making it. Now that we're living with my stepfather, we have food. So my mother would cook food, and she would literally drive hours to these locations, and she would give food to the needy. She'll give our used clothes to them, right? I was 11. Hours that we drove, right? Hours. And we were driving back home, and I said something to my mother. I said, I don't understand why we waste our day driving across town to people that don't even appreciate you, Mom. They didn't even say thank you. The conversation got so real, right, that she stopped the
Yeah.
car.
Oh,
She stopped
wow.
the car. And in Vietnamese culture, you don't look at your parents when they're lecturing you because that's disrespect, right?
Oh,
Just different
really?
culture. Yeah. When you
Okay.
get yelled at, you look at the ground because you look at your parents when they're yelling at, that's a disrespectful thing.
Okay.
But because my mom is starting to become more westernized, she said, I want you to look at me, son.
How'd
It
that
was
make you feel?
it was serious because she never did that. And she
Mhm.
said, I want to tell you something. She said, no matter the conditions, no matter the circumstances, if you can help people, if you can help others, you need to do what you can to help them. And in doing so, we create a better world.
Oh.
I'm like, wow, you know, thought about that night. And I was putting everything together, right? Since I was 8, I was putting everything together. The way, the path of Bushido, a higher purpose, to live life fearless, right? Because I was this defeated, small little frail boy afraid of every freaking thing, you know? My uncle said, do you want to be a commando? The way, the path, higher purpose. So it was that day that I chose the path to be a warrior. I chose the path to be a Green Beret so I can go around the world and to free the enslaved, to fight for the oppressed, to fight for, my family, people like me that escaped out of a war and torn country, to fight for those people. There's a force for that. It was the special forces. So at 11 years old, I wrote down that I'm going to be a Green Beret.
Right.
So I remember, I went to school. Academics was really important to my parents, straight, strict, military discipline, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. We had dress codes, you
Dress
bet.
codes?
Yeah, we had dress codes. We had to wear slacks and button-down shirts to school. My stepfather was old school, traditional.
Mhm.
right? So you treat, open the doors for girls and women, and you just have a lot of manners. And he taught us all this discipline, right? At 16, right? And I was still getting picked on. I was still getting picked on in school, racism, all that.
That never stops.
It never stopped. I had a goal.
You had a
I had a
greater,
greater purpose.
that's right. Yeah. That didn't matter anymore because they're children. And at that point, it seems like when you turned 11 and you made that decision, you decided at that point, I'm a grown man now. And this petty bullshit will not be the thing that breaks me.
I knew that wasn't going to break me because I knew my purpose was higher than hate. Because I choose compassion. I
Right.
choose love and compassion because my mother taught me compassion, and humanity was taught to me on that boat as I was floating out there. Some Russian ship picked me up. Humanity, compassion, and love was taught to me at a young age. So I knew as a warrior, I was going to take this energy and I was going to fight for the oppressed. And that was stronger, compassion is stronger than hate.
But you didn't have to, you were 3. Nobody would have if you decided to go down a different path in your life, nobody would have questioned that path because you were 3 years old when that compassion and humanity was shown to you. Your mother could have chosen to allow that to pass, that be a fleeting moment, and we've just been saved. But she chose to use that as the moment to teach you about humanity because you could have, and she could have so easily spoken so negatively about others because of what had just happened to you and your entire family.
That's right.
It's a real honest to God, I don't want to say luck, but there's divine intervention here, in my opinion. You don't make it out of what you've made it to where you are now if there isn't a reason for it, a bigger reason.
I believe in every person in this world is special. Every human being is, no matter where you are. And God's put you in this world to do a certain purpose, you know? And if your time is over and your purpose is done in this world, then you move on. If it's
Right.
not, then you're going to continue, right? And it's through the struggles if you find yourself or not. Because yeah, I faced the struggles. It almost broke me, it really
It,
did.
and nobody would have said a word about it because it's a goddamn miracle that you didn't break at 8 years old and 3 year olds and 11 years old, especially just from one adversity to the next. You never had a smooth path. You always had adversity thrown at you.
Yeah.
It seems like your stepfather was a turning point
He
in your
was.
life.
He was. And my uncle. Obviously,
Of
my mother
course.
was always that, strength, that continuous strength throughout my whole life. But it was like when times got bad, there was a positive energy to enter my life, right?
Right.
I didn't have friends growing up, so I'm talking from 11 years old into 16, right? I didn't really have friends. Nobody liked me because I was different, right? And my friends were my father's teammates, Green Berets, right?
Right.
And I met Green Berets in the neighborhood from Vietnam era. These are like legends, and
Yeah.
they became my friends. Um,
So crazy to me.
right, and they would come by and pick me up, and yeah, I don't know. We just hung out, and I knew the stories of the special forces at a young age.
And they
It's
respected you as that child that
because
wanted to come forward.
Green Beret Special Forces is there to free the oppressed. They're there to fight for the enslaved, and they're multicultural, multifaceted. They speak different languages, right? So
Right.
they're all about that. The
Mhm.
difference in the world. So 16, I remember this. I had it on my calendar, right? The date 16. I was going to start my training, so I did.
Okay.
Right? At 16, I started hardening my body, my mind, a lot of cardiovascular training back then, a lot of muscular endurance. I was prepping for the military.
Right.
At 18 years old, I graduated from school and told my mother I was joining the army.
What did she say?
She cried all night.
Oh,
She didn't say a word, she cried all night. I can hear it in the house, and the next day I graduated from high school, and I remember walking across the stage, and my mother had this, huge ceremony planned. She was so proud.
You should be.
I remember we were out in the parking lot after graduation. I handed my mother my diploma, and I thanked my mother, you know, for everything she's done, you know. And I was holding my little sister at that time. She was a little baby, and I kissed my little sister. I handed her over, and I said, "Mom, I really appreciate you, and thank you so much for everything you do. But I have to leave." And she's
Sure.
like, "You mean?" I said, "There's a recruiter right there waiting on me. He's going to drive me to the bus station tonight.
Oh,
I'm
for God's
leaving.
sake.
I'm leaving. For training." I knew what I wanted,
Right.
you know, since I was 11. And this day came, and I had to get away because I had to find my strength. You know. So I told my mother, I said, "Mom, you gave up so much for me. I promise you that I'm going to graduate from college. I'm going to make you proud of me." She was like, "Yeah, yeah," because she gave up so much for my brother and I to have this education, this higher life.
Yeah.
She always said education is your path to freedom, being
Mhm.
oppressed. So I did, I joined the military, just quickly. I went to the long range reconnaissance units, and then I eventually made my way to the special forces A teams at 21. I was stationed out in Okinawa, Japan, forward deployed in Asia. Um, but I want to share with you this education story. One of my first missions, I was 21 years old, Okinawa, Japan, Green Beret, right? Couldn't tell me anything, because
Right? I'm waiting for this because I know what's coming.
right? And you couldn't tell me anything because, I accomplished so much, in this short amount of time. And here I am. And I was from the oppressed, I'm freeing the oppressed now, you know? Let me tell you this story. I flew into Laos, that was one of my first missions. And during the Vietnam War, we Americans would drop hundreds of thousands of landmines through the rice paddies and fields, and these
Mhm.
landmines are still scattered out there in these jungles.
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
fast forward that to 98. Right? So the year 98, kids are playing around these rice paddies, and they're getting blown up. They're dying, amputees. So we heard news of this. So we forward deployed, special forces forward deployed, and we went into these villages, and we would find these landmines, and we'll show the villagers how to disarm the landmines and get rid of them.
Good
So
for you.
the kids can have a life. So I was 21, and I landed on the LZ. I was coming off the drop zone, and my linguist came running up to me. I was in Laos, and he started speaking to me in English. "Thank you for coming," and I was so excited. Right, one of my first missions, and this little girl came running up to me, and I'm like, "Oh, I got candy!" Right, so I started pouring my candy. I'm like, "Here's some candy," and she grabbed the candy. I remember her, cute little girl. Right? She had to been like 10. And she looked at the candy. I remember that. And she opened up my hand. She put the candy back in my hand. And she said something in Laos, and the linguist said, "Sir, do you have a pencil or a pen?"
Can't use she needs something she
I'm
can
like,
use.
"Wow." I pulled out a pen, right? I gave it to her. She pulled me down. She kissed me in the cheek. She ran off. She was so happy, right? So I was on mission mode, right? So I was
Mm.
going around the villages. I was checking out the security posture. I was looking at where the landmines. I was looking at the maps. I remember it was lunchtime, and the linguist said to me, he goes, "Sir, do you realize what you done this morning?" I said, "No." "What do you mean?" He goes, "When you gave that little girl a pen, do you realize what you done?" I said, "No." "What?" He goes, "Sir, you gave the girl education. I
Oh,
don't have
Jesus
money for
Christ,
pens.
you.
So here." And you know what came to my mind when I was looking at the map? I was looking at the map, and I was hearing this linguist talk to me. What came to my mind was my mother said that education if you have an education, you will never be oppressed. So
Two.
I draft I drafted an email that night, to headquarters, and I requested for more money for operational funds so we can go to the next village, the villages, so we can collect lumber and build schools. I wanted to build them a school, and we got our special forces engineers, and we rewired the river lines, so they could have running water in these villages. So what I'm trying to say is, what turned into a demining mission, I gave hope and education to a village, right? I gave them a future.
You did.
Off of one word my mother said to me when I was young: education is your free, will free you from oppression. And I realized that. And I tell you, there was stories like that multiplied through 27 countries. And I went to 27 countries in my career, and I fought in every continent. When 9/11 happened, we went to the Middle East. We fought there, and my last, I would say, my last years was I volunteered for the Horn of Africa. So we went into northern Africa after the fall of Libya, and then we did counter poaching campaigns, fought against Chad rebels, and I tell you, after 23 years, I was at 14 and a half years of war and conflict at that time. You know, and I was out in Cameroon, so I want to explain the story. So fast forward, I was in Asia. I fought wars in Asia. I went to Europe, did Europe time, and then I went to Middle East. Just got out of wars in the Middle East, and I went to fight in the wars in Africa. Right. So
Right.
now I'm this very seasoned uh,
Yeah.
special
Battle
operations.
hardens. Yeah, SF
Yeah, I
dude.
was just
Yeah.
very seasoned, right? I had a lot of experience underneath me around the world, and I was in Cameroon. Remember that when I walked across the stage and I gave my mother the diploma at my graduation.
Yeah.
I graduated the top of my class in college, right? So I graduated from college with honors while fighting counter poaching campaigns in Cameroon. I actually took my final exam on a Cameroon commando
No big deal. It's
camp.
fine. No excuses.
And my diploma came in when I was deployed, and my wife took a picture of it, and I sent it to my mother. And I remember the promise I made to my mom. So it went full circle.
Right. It
But I
really
tell
did.
you, during that time, I was falling apart. The war started catching up to me. You know, I was I didn't know it, but I was starting to face depression, and you know, it was just I saw the worst in the world. At that time, and I was sitting out in front of a tent in uh, in northern Cameroon in Bunamajita, and we're about to go into counter poaching campaign patrols that day with the Cameroon commandos. And I was sitting out there, man. I was drinking some chai tea. Sun was coming up. I was never present like that for a very long time. You ever been present, man? You ever been there in the moment where you like
Yeah.
appreciate everything and gratitude?
It doesn't happen often, but when it happens and it happens deeply, you
Yeah.
feel it in your bones.
The sun was coming up, and the wildlife was going through. Oh man, I feel grateful for life. And I haven't felt
After
that way. I haven't felt that way in a long time. And I knew that moment was going to come and go really fast.
yeah,
So I opened up my notebook and I wrote the word peace. I wrote the time and location: Cameroon, Northern Africa, peace. Because peace was my new journey.
right. You knew at that
So
moment?
after I rotated out of Cameroon, I went into South Africa, where I protected our former president, Barack Obama, during Mandela's funeral, and came back, and then I put in for retirement. So after 23 years of service, my new journey was peace.
Tell
You
me
know,
about that. Tell me about how you've done this transition because besides crying this whole interview, I know the value you're bringing, and people know that you don't just get to where you are now without a little bit of peace. I know I don't have you much longer, but can you give me some of the ways that you've been able to move forward and how to help others?
I'm gonna put you in my worst day.
Okay.
My wife was working up in Denver, and I just got out of Army, 23 years, and I was in a dark house. And at that point, I was heavy addicted to painkillers, because during the war, that's what they give us. I've been blown up, I've been shot, I've been a soldier, right? And they give you Percocets, and they give you Ambien to stay awake, and they give you sleeping pills.
Yeah.
So not to bash the army, it was just the way it was. That was the culture. It
Hmm.
was just not. It's war, right? And I was heavy addicted, and I was sitting in this dark room, and I was really like, I don't know, man. I was just really defeated, you know. And I was staring at this TV that was off for hours, and something told me to get up in my voice, get up. So I did, right? And I don't even know what I was doing. I was just walking around the house with a blanket wrapped around
Jason?
me, just pacing back and forth. And somehow this energy led me down to my office. Don't know how I got there. Don't even know why. It's just wandered down there.
Right.
And I was standing in front of my bookcase, and I opened up my book. I'm a big reader, big student of life, right?
Hmm.
Pulled out a book, and it was called The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. He was a Ronin. He was a samurai. He was a philosopher. He was a gardener. He was everything I wanted to be at such a young age when I was 11. I read the Book of Five Rings. I was 13 for the first time. You know, and Musashi, this Ronin, was everything I wanted to be as a human being. This complete person of spirituality, right? And here I am. I walked this path of Bushido, the way of the code of samurai, and somehow this code, this way, was lost. How can something so right and freeing and enslaved and helping out the world put you in such a dark place? I was in this dark place. So I opened up the Book of Five Rings, and I read the first passage, and the passage said that everything exists. Look nowhere else. Exists within you. All your love, all your compassion, everything's within, nowhere else.
That's profound.
You know?
What was it at that moment that made you keep moving forward besides this book?
Oh gosh, I was defeated at that point. I didn't even know how I can move forward. But
Were
I
you
knew,
reminiscing?
but I knew like the answer was within, because the answer was within when I was 8 years old,
Right. That's
when I
the
was
reason.
11, right? It was there. But somehow I lost it because I was looking for the answers everywhere else. I was looking into the addictions of the chemicals that I would throw into my body. I would look into supporting my wife, but she don't understand. How can you understand war at that
You
level,
can't. Yeah, you can't.
right? And I would call my stepfather. How did you do it, man? I don't think my stepfather got over his wars. He didn't say anything.
You had no response to that.
No. So I knew I was in a really bad place, and I knew the answers were within. When I was out in the First Special Forces Group, I traveled all through Asia, so I saw these different practices.
Hmm.
And in America, we push towards the Western medication, or slamming, drugs down our throats,
Hmm.
and done, But the Eastern way is everything's within.
Right.
No drugs, everything's within, right? So I knew that was through a form of practice of meditation.
Okay.
So I Google meditation, right? I'm like,
The
how
best
hard
way
is that?
how?
Right? How hard is that? Mindfulness meditation, right? So I remember I was so confident. I wrote down a course of action, how I'm going to execute to the T, the location, the time. I had everything planned out like a Green Beret.
Of course.
And I bought a meditation mat and everything. I went down into my office. I shut the door because in my mind I was going to trap my spirit in that room with me.
Got it.
When I talk to you, if I tell you, "Hey, how's your mother?" or "How's your father?" or "How's your son doing?" Right? Your mind is going to drift to wherever I'm saying. Your mind is always drifting. It's free floating. It's in either the past, you're thinking about stuff that happened to you, or you're thinking about stuff in the future. You're never in that present moment.
Right.
But you're now, right?
Mm.
So meditation gives you that practice. And I sat down in my office and I meditated. 30 minutes was my first go, and I failed miserably. I couldn't lock down. I couldn't quiet down the voices in my mind. I couldn't control my breathing. So meditation, I'm like, wow, that is harder than I thought,
Yep.
right?
Very
And
hard.
I failed. I feel so bad that day.
But honestly, too, I'm gonna stop you. You know why you didn't fail that day, right? You
Yes,
understand why you didn't fail that day, right? Okay, good. As long as you understand that. So correct your ass real quick.
yeah. So when I say I failed, is I was not able to lock in. Is what I mean, right? So I
Got it.
went upstairs. I remember I went upstairs. My wife was cooking dinner, and I wrote down the issues I had. Couldn't lock in. I was thinking about this thought. I wrote it all down. I want to bring you back to this story because this is the seed of how I got over my thing. I was doing mountain warfare training in northern India, up in Kashmir, Jammu area. It's near the border of Pakistan, India, and China. Right, we
Yep.
were doing mountain warfare training. We're 18,500 feet, so I was near
Oh,
Tibetan borders. And my friends, during the weekends, they would relax because we train all week. But being Tu Lam, and the Ronin, I wanted to visit the Tibetan monks. So I grabbed my linguist and I went into Tibetan monk country. And I asked the monk, I remember I asked the monk. The monk was so happy to see me, right? And I asked the monk, I said, "Monk, how come the world is so cruel?"
Ooh,
And the monk, and I want to say this to our viewers because I was born in war, I faced racism, and I saw the worst in humanity as a Green Beret. So that's a true legitimate question for me. Why is
absolutely.
the world so cruel? And I just came out of the conflicts in the Philippines. We lost some teammates. And the monk came over, he grabbed my hand, he smiled, and he brought me out in the back of the temples, right? And he had a stick, and he drew this circle on the ground in the sand. He grabbed these two sacks of these bags, and he threw them on the ground. In one sack it was white rocks, and another sack was black rocks. And he said he sat there in front of this circle on the ground for years. I want to say 4 years.
Wow.
And he said, and he would sit there, and when he think of a thought, right? When his mind goes, because he started monitoring his thought, he said, "When I think of a negative thought, I'll take a black rock and I'll cast it into this circle into the ground. And I have a positive thought, I'll cast a white rock into the circle." And he said, for many years, it was all black. He wanted, he said around the third year, he started casting his first white stone.
The third year?
Yeah. And then he slowly started casting more white stones. He says, "Now it's all white stones." And I'm like, wow, what's changed? Like,
Yeah.
how? He said, "You see, son," he goes, "the world is so cruel because people don't take inventory of their thoughts. They don't know what they're subconsciously thinking.
Mhm.
So then, if you don't know what you're thinking, then you can't control your emotions. And the world is so cruel because people are unaware of their emotions, therefore they cannot control it. If you can control your emotions, then the world will be a kinder place." So here I am in this dark room again the second day. meditation. Again, I failed. And I wrote down notes. And I failed for the first year, right?
Did you
And
meditate every day for a
every day
year?
for the first year, every day.
Commitment, too. Commitment.
Thank you. But you see, now I understand because, gosh, man, I was born in war. I faced race. I had all these adversities placed against me my whole life. Of course, I'm going to have all these my subconscious mind is screaming all these negative thoughts because that's the only thing I had to deal with my whole life.
That's all you knew.
That's all I knew. So all I had was negative thoughts in my mind. And here I am sitting in quiet, you know, and all I can hear was these negative thoughts in my mind. And I failed and I failed and I failed. And I remember waking, and I was still heavily addicted to drugs. I woke up one morning and I was like, I looked in the mirror and I said, I hate you.
Too.
And I went to the medicine cabinet and I dumped everything down the toilet. And I quit cold turkey. And
Oh, God.
let me tell you what happens when you quit cold turkey after 8 years of being
Mhm.
on that, right? The weight of the world. The weight of the world. I heard the screams. I heard the visuals of everything that I saw around the world, came crashing down at that very point. And man, I would say that was the lowest point of my life. But that's what I needed. I needed that, right? Because that pain allowed me to work on myself. So every day I didn't cast the rocks into a circle on the ground, but I carried a notebook
Okay.
and I would write down my thoughts every day, every moment. It was all negative, right?
For a
Um,
long time.
Very long time. And during this time, I was entrepreneur in my company, and I tell you, I'm a hard worker, and my wife is a hard worker, and we became very successful because we're hard workers. And and I entrepreneur a company, and that became very successful. We got hired on to the History Channel TV show. Here I am co-hosting on a TV show, and Call of Duty calls me up. I'm acting out on these roles, and everybody's like, "Man, you got your shit together too."
But
In my mind, I was losing this war to depression, and I was spiraling out of control. In front of everybody, I would smile, but
your
inside, I was falling
face.
apart. I was falling apart. So, with the opiate addictions and all that, eventually, through meditation and practice of the mindfulness, I was able to get over it. And once I was able to get over it, then my mind wasn't so clouded anymore. So for 3 years, I meditated. And for 3 years, I couldn't quiet down the noise. So let me explain to you, I was sitting out in the deck one morning. I was drinking my coffee and I heard birds.
Mm.
Let me explain this, people. And let me
No, I
explain.
get it. I get it. That's why I'm
Okay.
sitting here going, uh-huh, I know what you're saying.
Because the war has taken that from me. When I say that is I never really admired life. I just saw the worst of it. So I heard birds and I was like, wow, beautiful sound. And I wrote that word down. I wrote it down and I revisited that night. It's like, if this meditation wasn't working, then how did I hear birds? Right? It was working. It was slowly working, right? I was slowly getting into my subconscious. And I tell you, man, I continued. I went on, and during this stage of my life, I'm an entrepreneur, and we're very successful. But I still go to leadership programs. I go to seminars, right? And I went to a Tony Robbins seminar.
Oh gosh, how was that?
He's real intense, Tony Robbins. He has an energy to him. But Tony's claim to fame is, he traveled the world and he trained monks, European monks and Asian monks, and every monk you could think of, right? He studies the mind and body connection. But his claim to fame is that he can change his physiology to affect his mind, right? The mind is connected to the body.
Right.
Okay. So I went to the seminar, and I had some stuff that I couldn't shake. Like there was a few things that, the meditation was working, but there's some things that I couldn't breach over.
Right.
Right. And Tony Robbins taught me that. He taught me how to change my physiology. But one thing I want to leave with you guys is that he taught me this, and this was the biggest thing. If I asked you today, I'm going to ask you this question, right?
Right.
So
Fantastic.
out of these moral values, significance, love, connection, um, uh, certainty or uncertainty, which one do you value most? Significance, which is your standards as an
Right.
individual, right?
Mhm.
Love, connection,
Mhm.
certainty. You have to live in uncertainty. Things have to be on schedule, or uncertainty. You live in chaos. What do you put as number one? And I could tell you, whatever you put as number one, I could tell you exactly if you're happy or not, if you're ever going to be fulfilled in life or not.
Oh, great. This is not on the spot at all. I put love first.
Yeah, man.
You
You're
have
always
to.
going to be happy, and you're going to be fulfilled in life. You see, I want to tell you this because significance was my energy.
Okay.
Think about it.
Right.
Bro, boy, defeated, right? Defeated, picked on in life. He's a weak individual, just trying to prove himself in life and trying to help free to oppress. So my standards had to be incredibly high,
Right.
right? My standards in life had to be incredibly high to be who I am, to do what I do. I had to have this mental, strong mind. But man, I tell you, when I got out of the military, what made me who I am in the military, if I continue to drive on with that, I would never find happiness. I would never find fulfillment. I would be successful as in money, right? Because that's hard worker, that's significance, right?
Right.
Right. Your standards are high, but you will
Mhm.
never find fulfillment,
The true peace.
gratitude. You'll never find any of that.
Right.
So that's what Tony Robbins taught me when I came out at seminar. Now I changed up my morning rituals because I
Okay.
have morning rituals. I want to explain why the morning is so important. The morning is so important. You have to win the mornings. You
Mhm.
have to wake up in the morning like you're going to battle, right? You have to get out of bed like I'm going to war because you have to win that battle in the morning. If you win that morning, man, you win that day. You win
Okay.
that day consistently, you win the game of life, right?
So what are you
So
doing
what
in
I
the
wanted to
mornings?
right? So, before I used to get up I get up at 4:30 in the morning and I take a shower to wake me up. But the last minute I turn into ice cold water, right, in the
Mm.
shower and I stand
Mhm.
and it makes me control my breathing because you can't stand in there unless you are truly focused on the moment, right? So I
Right.
go into my breathing controls. So why do I turn on the water so cold? Is that basically I'm allowing my body to wake up. The cold water hits my muscle, blood's rushing to my muscles. I can feel my body waking up. So by the time I get out of the shower, I'm kind of awake, right? At
Yeah,
4:30
you're
in the morning,
pinging.
I'm
Yeah.
pink. And if you're a big coffee drinker, which I love coffee, I make my coffee then, and then I go into my deck. And the sun's not up, still dark. I'm sitting out there in the quiet. And I usually sit there for a minute just to take in the morning. And then I pray to God.
Mhm.
I said my prayers to God, and then I show gratitude for life in that day. And I promise God that I will do the best I can to live, this day to the fullest and to become the best person I can this day, right? So you're making a promise to the universe and you're making a promise to yourself already. And
Mhm.
you're showing gratitude, which gratitude is a positive energy because gratitude is tied to love. Love is tied to compassion. Compassion is tied to what? Fulfillment, right? All this.
Yeah.
So then I go into meditation. Usually my meditation now is 45 minutes. I can lock
Oh,
in for 45 minutes,
wow.
right? And people always ask me, like, what is meditation? Like, how do you know you lock in? And I say, you ever heard a professor talk and then you're just staring at him? And you're not
Mhm.
really paying attention, you're just staring at him almost in a trance. That's what it is. You're almost in a trance. And why is meditation so important is because you have your subconscious mind and you have your conscious mind and you have your analytical, right? So let me explain this to you. 95% of your brain is made up of your subconscious mind. That means all your programs, all your experiences, all your thoughts, and everything from the
Mhm.
past is stuck in this subconscious mind. And then you got your conscious mind, which makes up 5% of it, and then it's divided by analytical mind. Meditation slows down your analytical mind enough where you can get into the subconscious. If I tell you, hey man, just be happy,
Yeah,
you can't just say, I'm just going to be
I'm
happy today,
happy.
right? You can't, because you have to slow down your brain waves enough into the beta mode where you can get into the subconscious. That's what meditation does. It slows down your analytical mind in order for you to inject positivity, inject gratitude, inject God, inject all these new things. So basically, what I'm teaching you guys is how to reprogram your mind.
It can be done
It can
with
be done
commitment
with
and
commitment,
dedication.
hard work,
Yes.
hard work. And there's nothing in life that comes to us without hard work. So it takes hard work, guys. You don't just find happiness by just waking up and then going to work and coming home and being around your family in a safe area. That's not happiness. Happiness is found in what you do, what you give daily to better yourself as a human being, right? So it's to live in beauty and live in gratitude. So now, as a Ronin, um, after 6 years of that, I found my peace. you know and people always like, people don't understand the weight of that when I say that. I never had
No.
it. I never had peace. I never had a normal childhood. you know I never had a normal career. I fought for those, and I never found my peace until now. So now that I found my peace, my zen. I travel around the United States. I teach, right? I teach bushido. I teach the way of the warrior, the code of a Ronin, a samurai, to live by a higher purpose, higher power. And I travel around the United States. I teach major law enforcement. I teach military. I teach law-abiding civilians. And our teaching curriculum is very popular. We're booked out years. People are dying to get in our programs. But what I found out is more than just the way of a gun or a knife, which I do teach. Right, I teach lethality. But people walk away with a sense of spirituality in themselves.
And that's what's missing in our culture right now. And that ability to lean on that and find your way with that and have that be part of you and be able to grasp onto that when you're at your lowest of your low.
That's right. So by understanding that, now I can give back to the veterans, and I do. I go to these, Navy SEAL foundations. I go to Green Beret foundations. I go to Warrior War, where we sit with doctors and we talk to them about medical treatments for our veterans and our law enforcements, and anybody who's faced trauma. Now I find myself public speaking in these venues, talking about being this stronger person and how you have to face defeat in order to find, yourself, right? Because I always tell people life is a series of wrong paths
Yeah,
until you find your right path,
that's right.
right? So that's where I am now, and that's the journey that I came out of. It was hard, obviously, but you can see I worked on myself, right? And I worked on myself daily. But what I want you guys to understand, and this is to the viewers, is that the answer to life, my life, and the answer to my purpose was found in a small cardboard box when I was 8 years old as a defeated boy, right? So the answers to life will come to you when you're defeated, because that's the only energy that will allow you to grow. Defeat, right? Failure. So I want you to live your guys' life without fear, man, right? And if we fail, what's the bigger gain? Knowledge,
Right,
experience,
right.
right? So and that's what I do as a Ronin. I go around and I teach people, this inner power, and I give people the basically the art of Budo, the art of combat,
Mhm.
in order to to safeguard themselves from the crimes in our country, the growing rate of crimes in our countries.
To it I hate to say this, but I'm almost for how horrifically you were left by your father. I am internally grateful, and I think the rest of the world is for the opportunity that he left you those. It's not that it maybe would have been them as their the only thing that could have been the catalyst. Obviously, your father leaving was hell for you, but at least he left you with that last parting gift that
Yeah,
brought you forward. And I'm choosing to see that at least he left you with something that could
yeah,
turn you and help turn you into the man and help the world the way you are now too. I think your father-in-law, as hard as he was on you, I'm grateful for him doing that to you, as difficult as it was. Because when I sit here and see you and as you're talking, again, I'm sorry, but I don't see you as the two you are now. I see you as the 11-year-old boy who has not only successfully done everything he ever dreamed of and more, but while doing it, you saved countless lives. You brought what your mother told you to do in education to the world, and you have done nothing but honor your family.
thank you. And I think that things come full circle because I want to explain this to you. I was in northern uh, Cameroon, up in Bunamajita, and the rebels will come in and they'll kill innocent people, a lot of innocent people. So as a refugee, as a child born in war, I can look upon this child who lost his father, who lost his mother that day, with compassion at the highest level because I felt that pain. I felt that pain to be ripped out, spit on, to be ridiculed, to kill off your race because you're just different. And that's what people don't understand is that I stand for equality. I stand for life. That's
Mhm.
what I stand for. You know, and my mother taught me that at a young age, and that's what I give to the world. And what is more needed at this time?
So much love.
What's more needed in our country than love at this time? Like compassion.
It's
It's
so
nothing
true.
more, right? And
It's
I feel like my story too of people neglect freedoms.
oh,
Ronald Reagan
exactly.
said that we're one generation away from losing our freedoms, and I'm proof of that. I was born. I lost my freedoms and countries and everything I had at 3 months old. You know, and I think back to my mother. Now that I'm older, I think back now that I'm older, and I want you to think. I want you to think about put yourself as a mother, right? I want you to think about this: grabbing your two boys and loading a boat, knowing there's a high possibility that all of us will die, but yet you're willing to gamble that away for your sons to grow up knowing what it means to be free. There's nothing more American than that.
No, there's not.
So,
Sorry. This
oh,
you're
it's a
just
I cry when I think to my mom, and I think back to her, and and when people try to talk to me about what is being American, there's nothing more than that, and that's what this country was found on. You know,
yep,
and
yep,
I feel like with me sharing my story, because it is the modern day story, right? Not everybody can relate to the colonial 13 colony days, right? Right, but people can relate to being racism, that people can relate to being picked on and bullied, and born in
yeah.
war. So
Jesus
that's my
too.
message.
To I'm just I I don't even have to wait for the response. I know from all of my listeners, we owe you as a society and humanity a debt of gratitude. So you need to know that there are people out there, and I know you probably know this. There are so many people out there that are grateful for your wisdom and for you having to go through that hell to be who you are. I hate every second of the thought when you tell me to think about that truthfully because it breaks me at that idea. I don't know that I could have been as strong as your mother. Um, I have seen the worst of war, but I have not seen it on the repetition that you have. But I know what it can do to a human being, and to know that you did it for 20 years the way that you did it and still somehow came out of it at your lowest of low. And instead of making suicide your option, you decided that it was time to do the work. And I preach that on a regular basis. No one will get better or be better if you don't do the work. We can't fix you with drugs the way people think that you can. That numbs you. It they did that to me. It numbs you, it breaks you, it tears you down, and it causes lifelong issues. And if we can all look a little bit differently inside ourselves the way you have and be willing to do the work. And if you'll allow me, when I release this, I would like to tag the book that you read when you were young, because I think it will be of value to others to read something and see something the way that you did. And maybe it will give one person, if anybody, just one person, a little piece of hope to drive forward and do better. I think
Yeah,
it's possible.
it is. It is so possible. And guys, look, your viewers out there, and I'm sure some of them are going through some hard times, right? And look, guys, it's needed. Understand that, I was in Malaysia and I was doing jungle warfare training, and I saw this snake. Right, it was slithering across. It was a huge snake, jungle snake, and he was clawing his way across the tree. This snake looked so uncomfortable. Basically, was scratching. It was itching itself out of his own skin. And I wrote down that it was through the discomforts that you grow. So it's through the discomforts that you grow, right? So I want you to look at your life a little bit different. So all the struggles, everybody that's listening right now, I want you to look at your life a little bit different. I want you to look back at your pain and your failures and everything, and I want you to understand that that's needed, right? It's just the way that you look at it. If you victimize yourself, then obviously you're going to fail. But if you don't, and you take the bigger gain, which is knowledge, right? Which is knowledge, because I can tell you, man, I could look at a person that's faced racism, and I understand that to the deepest level, right? And I can understand war to the deepest level where, we lost everything. So what I'm saying is I took my pain and I made it purpose,
Right.
right? So that's why I need you guys to do. I want you to look back at your life and take your pains and your hardest times, and trust me, that's your purpose. Because you can't you can't really push something with passion at that level unless you felt that pain. There's got to be a reason that's going to bring you to that next level, and usually it's pain, right? Usually,
Almost always.
yeah, it's discomfort, is pain. So
Jesus
that's
Christ.
needed to grow, So embrace it.
Wow. Okay. Two, not only have you taken words out of my mouth, and I can attest that that never happens. Talk too much. Um, there's God damn it, there's so much value in that past hour and a half. On substantially different levels than I thought there would be. I am so beyond honored to have had this conversation with you. I'm so beyond honored because you are going to affect so many more people. That I know my listeners, right? I know these people and I know they're struggling. That's why they turn to me. They're struggling. because I'm very honest about the struggle. And I think that what you've just brought to them is going to be so damn significant in their life that I think you've just you've changed so many people's lives. I mean, just add it to your list, right, of incredible things that you have a tendency to do and make the rest of us look like up to you because it's impressive. You're impressive. Your wife, your marriage is impressive. The
Yeah,
way that you have chose to live your life, path you have taken, you could have rolled over and just taken this and said, "Well, this is what happens to me. This is, the life I was born into." But instead, you grabbed it, you made it yours, and in turn, you made it better. This world is better for you too.
thank you. I really think that I have to thank my mother, right? The conditions and circumstances does not define you. Your actions daily defines who you are to become.
Okay. Wow. Um, oh, two. I'm I'm gonna leave it there because if I don't, I'm gonna continue to cry. And your mother, your mother, we have the world to thank. We do. And continue doing what you're doing. Can you please tell everyone where they can find? I mean, you Googled Tu Lam and you're gonna find them, but can you tell them where to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a website, www.ronintactics.com. You can follow us on Instagram at ronintactics.com. I mean, at Ronin Tactics, and then Facebook at Ronin Tactics. And you can follow us on YouTube at Ronin Tactics. YouTube, usually I like to spread philosophy. I like to spread my teachings and martial arts.
Hmm.
Instagram is more motivational, to keep people going daily, right?
Hmm.
I feel like that should be it, right? Like social media
Yes.
should be like a network of people motivating each other to create a better world, supporting each other. But what we find is, some people want to turn it into a hate group, right? So what we have to
Right.
do is that you have to be stronger than hate, right? And you get on these platforms, motivate people, help others out, and in doing so, we create a better world.
Oh my gosh, too. It's an honor. It has been one of my favorite opportunities I've ever had to
Well,
sit and
thank you.
talk with someone like you. All right, everybody. That's Tu Lam, and I'm going to beg, plead, borrow, and steal to have him on again. So go check him out. We will talk with you all next week.